And a very good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon session in which we are going to be discussing referencing and the importance of referencing and some of the things associated with referencing. I am recording the session so that our students who are unable to make it to the session can benefit from the class as well. We will be sharing the link on our different module sites. So this is specifically for the modules FRR 5905, 5906, 5907, and 5908. And your lecturers are Prof. van Graan, who is the lecturer for 5905, Dr. McQuena, who is the stand-in lecturer currently for 5906, and Professor Benson, that's myself on the left for 5907, and Prof. Horn for 5908. So what will we be looking at this afternoon? We will basically just be focusing on referencing, in-text referencing. That's when your reference forms part of the text, and then your reference list, or as we call it, a list of references. We do not use a bibliography. And then we will also talk a little bit about why it is important to reference. We have noted that assignment 1 and assignment 2, this is really something that our students are struggling with. And this is it's not going to go away. It forms a major part of your dissertation, and your references are not the responsibility of the editor. The editors will check your reference accuracy, but they will charge you per reference if you expect them to do that. So the references and the reference list and the formatting thereof is your responsibility. It's part of your postgraduate journey. So let's just recap quickly where we are. Assessment 1, 2, and 3. You only have 3 assessments. I know the block on the right shows 4, but there are only 3 assessments. The block is just to illustrate that we scaffold. In other words, it's stepping. So assignment 1 is your foundational assignment. We marked and we returned it to you with comments. And then assignment 2 was your draft 1 of your research report. This was also marked and it was returned to you with comments. And then your third assignment will be your revised assignment 2. It is important that you attach to assignment 3 your marked assignment 1 and marked assignment 2, so that we can see what guidelines we gave you going from assignment 1, assignment 2, and if you stayed on the right track. So why do we reference? At the end of the day, there is a criminal justice principle, or our standard of proof in terms of when we go to court. Not our standard of proof, our burden of proof is he who alleges must prove. So in a research space, when you are arguing for or against something and you are alleging something, you must prove that it's not just something you sucked out of your thumb. It's something that you just heard, like hearsay evidence. You must be able to situate what you are saying or the argument that you are making out of a reliable source. Now, what is a reliable source? A reliable source is something that has passed checks and balances in terms of quality control. So there is editing, there is fact checking, there is rigor in the process to gather the information. The way that the information was gathered is discussed. It's transparent. There's nothing hidden. There's nothing sinister. So the U magazine and the Drum magazine are not considered reliable sources of factual information. If you are arguing something out of a theoretical standpoint, let's say in criminal justice. But If you are in media studies or if you are in marketing, then you will go to sources like the U magazine or the Star newspaper or the Sun to go and look at principles they apply within the media space or within the marketing space. So it depends on your context, but in terms of our space, the Drum and the U magazine will not be considered a reliable source, and neither is Wikipedia a reliable source in our context. Now, the whole idea behind referencing is that we give you a roadmap. We tell you what it is that we expect of you and how to do it every step of the way. Now, the reference guide, this one, has come with you since you joined UNISA. It had other names, it looked different, but the principles contained in this study guide, in this case, tutorial letter, sorry, is the same, has remained largely unchanged. What has happened with our latest School of Criminal Justice referencing guide is they have expanded it to include additional information that we felt the students were not always privy to or not always having it at hand. So they've expanded it. But today we are just going to look at the specific discussion on the references. We will be looking at in-text references. It's also called citations. And we will be looking at the reference list. What you see there is library books. You can see those little white tags on them indicates it's library books. And all of these books have specific referencing styles. Now, it is very, very, very important that if you are in the School of Criminal Justice, this is the only referencing style that you may use. Nothing else is acceptable. We do not make use of footnotes or endnotes. We only make use of a reference list and in the Harvard style or the Harvard abridged style and in text references. As I said, all these different sources have their own referencing style. So if you access something, you have to reference what you use, because there's no such thing as general knowledge in research, because what you know, you read somewhere, all of us. So it's important that we situate what we are doing on from a legitimate and findable platform. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, there are some principles that are very important when we talk about referencing. So the rule of thumb is we do not use sources older than 10 years. I know in some disciplines, they do not use sources older than 5 years. So in our discipline, our parameters are at least 10 years, unless you are arguing about the chronological development of something. So let's say, for example, you are doing a longitudinal study on the impact of, let's say, policy on safety and security in South Africa. Then you would start in, let's say, 2010, and you would mention policy, and you would compare that with, let's say, crime stats, and then you would go 2011, 12, 13, etc. So if you are doing a chronological study in which you are studying how something evolved over time, then a source older than 10 years is acceptable. But always try and find the original source. Look for context-specific material. So, for example, if you are talking about interviews in a research methodology, context. Do not give me a definition of what is an interview in a work setting, for example, a job interview. So you have to utilize the context from the space that you are writing. There are some instances where we use page numbers in the text or not. If you are referring to, let's say, an entire book, let's say I want to argue that several studies have looked at gender-based violence in the past 5 years, then I cite the studies. Then I can cite Blighnow 2020, Mabua 2019, Tsonga 2019, and Pillay 2015, because then I'm referring to the entire source. But if I am arguing about something, let's say I'm arguing that Mokoena argued in 2021 that the low-card principle is largely misunderstood, then I have to make mention of the specific page number that I took or that I used that specific argument from, or that viewpoint from. If you are using an online source, it's not always possible to have a page number, but when you copy the URL, I will be able to see, and your marker will be able to see whether it's a PDF document, because PDF will be in the URL. If it's a PDF, it's the same as having the book in front of you. Then you can insert the page number. But if it's not a PDF, then the absence of the page number is in the text is okay. When you do your reference list, the reference list must be arranged alphabetically in terms of the surname of the first author. If you are referring to several sources in the text, let's say, for example, I want to say in the past 10 years, several research articles have been published that dealt with gender-based violence, and I'm using, let's say, Horn, I'm using Pillay, and I'm using Albuquerque. So then I must first have Albuquerque, then I must have Horn, and then I must have Pillay, and arrange the three different sources alphabetically. I also do not number the reference list. So in other words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it's important that how I reference make it for the reader of my reference list simple to find the specific source that I'm using. I always advise my students to go to the original text. I don't like Botha 2015 in Mokoena 2021, for example. So always try and go to the original text. Otherwise, it's hearsay. It's how Mokoena interpreted Botha in terms of the context he was writing in. And then we will briefly talk a little about paraphrasing and when to quote. The rule of thumb also that I advise my students, remember, it's okay to quote, but not more than 10% of your total document may be quotes. And it's also very difficult for me and your lecturers to determine, do you understand what the author was saying if you quote? I often advise my students that if they are using a piece of legislation, quote the legislation. And then after that, you can give your analysis of the legislation. Now you're going to wonder, but won't that impact on Turnitin? Yes, it will. And that is why when you submit to Turnitin, your lecturer or your supervisor will interrogate the findings to see, okay, yes, let's say you quoted out of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. Then that section is fine. We disregard that piece of text that is quoted. We actually only are interested in those sections of the text where you have not sufficiently paraphrased. So please, I want to encourage you. There are numerous training interventions for Turnitin, and it is absolutely to your benefit to attend the training. The new Turnitin program is able to pick up AI-generated text. So if you are using ChatGPT or any other software to write your assignments, be aware that the system will pick it up, and it is against the university rules to make use of AI for your studies. Just something on the listing style or the format. We start with the surname of the author or authors, followed by a comma, a space, and then an initial in capital letters with a full stop, and then a space. Then it's the year of publication. So this is now in the text, the year of publication, followed by a colon, and the page number should always be included if available. You have the colon, and then you have the page number. So here's some examples of what that would look like in the text. So for example, we would have, let's say, you want to cite from Weber, and you want to say that the Locard principle is used during DNA analysis to determine whether there was a, or in terms of blood splatter analysis, to determine the directionality of the force. And then you open bracket, then you put the surname of the author, a comma, then there will be a space, then there's the date, then the colon. Now, in some instances, the tutorial letter permits you to have a space between the colon and the page number, and or not. So you put the page number, then you close the bracket. The rule of thumb is that if you decide to have a space, then you must do it consistently throughout. If you don't have a space, do it consistently throughout. So this is what it looks like when there is no space. Sorry, this is what it looks like here by Goldner, where there is no space. And then this is what it looks like when there is also a space. You also will have an option in terms of the comma after the author to have a comma or not. Again, rule of thumb, if you are going to go without the comma, there will just be a space and then the date, then you follow that consistently. So this is what your source looks like if it's not part of the sentence. But if it is part of the sentence, then you will, for example, write it like this. While it has been shown by Sandbrook, open bracket, date, colon, page number, close bracket, and then the rest of your sentence goes on. A little bit more about the listing style. As I said, always in alphabetical order and never numbered. So, but let's say you have two authors, or you have an author with two publications in the same year. Then you will have the first one in terms of alphabetically, the title of the text. You will have the first one will then be 2014A, and the second one will be 2014B, and that will also then be reflected like that in the text. Okay, so we are going to be looking at today some of these examples. We're going to be looking at a standard book with one author and a book with two or more authors, with and without an editor. We will be looking at an author that does book chapters with an editor, author of a journal article, dissertations or theses, study guides, online sources, and legislation. Okay, so let us first take a look at a book with one author. Here's an example of a book with one author. So the author is Saldana, and the title of the book is Thinking Qualitatively. So you will write then Thinking Qualitatively, colon, then there will be a space, methods of mind, full stop. That whole a title will then be in italics because the book is published. I did not mention that, but let's talk about that quickly. When you write your reference list, if a source is published, in other words, if it's bought and sold, then the title of the source is always in italics. So where do we find the date and everything? So if you page over the cover page, it's usually a page or two on. It's called the title page verso or the back. Yeah, you can see on the left-hand side, it's stage publications. You can see there's a copyright date of 2015. So if I want to enter this into a reference list, I will have Saldana, comma, space, J, full stop, space, and then I will have 2015, full stop, space, and then I will write the title, thinking qualitatively, colon, space, methods of mind, full stop, and then I will have a space. And now we look at, okay, place of publication and publisher. So the publisher is simple, it's Sage. But now we see there's Los Angeles, London, New Delhi, Singapore, Washington, DC. Rule of thumb is take the first place. Los Angeles, colon, space, and then Sage. Not Sage Publications, just Sage and full stop. On the right-hand side, you can see there's the table of content, and each chapter has is the same author. So let's say you are looking at chapter 5, you will then reference the page numbers out of chapter 5, and that is how you do a one author book. So if there is one author, it will be the surname. Yeah, it's Jones, comma, space, and then the initials, A, comma, A full stop, M full stop, space, and then the date, full stop, space. And yeah, you can see the title of the source in italics, full stop, and then there's a space, and then place of publication is London, colon, space, and then Sage, full stop. No publication, no nothing. Now, you would have noticed that Sage is written with a big capitals S-A-G-E. Now, if you want to, in this context, write capitals S-A-G-E, that's fine, but then you just have to use it consistently throughout your referencing. Let's talk about a sentence case and capital case. You will see that this entry is the first letter is with a capital, and then directly after the colon, there is a capital. In the next entry, the first letter is a capital, and directly after the colon, there's a capital. So to this one, fair in the city and urban. Now, this is one style of doing it. You can do it capital perspectives from the community with a big C, case studies with a capital C, S with a capital S, in small, offender with a capital, rehabilitation with a capital. But then this one will have to read practical, research with a capital R, planning and design with a capital D. So you see it's these key terms that are capitalized if you follow that format. Words like from, the, in would not be capitalized. Okay, 2 or more authors in a book. So here we have a book by Marx, van der Walt, and Born, and it also reflects it's a 10th edition. So we are going to look on the left-hand side. So it's LexisNexis. So LexisNexis is the publisher. And then place of publication, the first one, Durban. Everybody knows where Durban is. So Durban will be the place of publication. There will be a colon, there will be a space, and then you will write LexisNexis as it's written here. A capital E-L-E-X-I-S, no space, capital N-E-X-I-S, full stop. And this is where your authors are. This one is a little bit more different because the first author is also the editor. So in this case, it will be Marx, comma, space, B, full stop, comma, space, van der Walt, comma, space, capital A, full stop, ampersand, space, born, comma, space, P, full stop, space, and then the date. Okay, so yeah, you can see all the chapters are written by all these authors. So you do not have to split the various chapters by author. We're going to look at another example just now where different authors have written different chapters. So here it's clear that the different authors are all collaborating with the chapter. So there are now 3 authors there. So this is the example I gave you. Let's look at this. Boshoff, comma, space, big H. That's the initial, full stop, comma, space. Second author, Botha, comma, space, capital A. That's the initial, full stop, and then the ampersand. And then space, Shontai, the third author, comma, space, big M, full stop, space. Then the date, full stop, space. Okay, and then the title. This is now the title of a monograph. So it's going to look a little bit different than it would have done with a book. So let's imagine this is the book's title. Then there's a full stop, a space, and 8th edition in brackets, full stop, and space. You will see that there are 2 ways of doing this in the study tutorial letter. Pick one style and follow it consistently. Okay, and then it's Upper Saddle River. Now, not everybody knows where Upper Saddle River is. This is in New Jersey. So you would then have Upper Saddle River, comma, space NJ, which stands for New Jersey, colon, space, Pearson Prentice Hall, in this case, is the publishers. So that would be 3 or 2 or more authors in terms of the reference list. Okay, sometimes it happens that you make use of previous postgrad studies. Now, all of our postgrad studies, each and every one of them, is available to you at the library in e-copy. You just need to go and look for it. You need to go and look at LibGuides. There's a lot of information under LibGuides for the students of criminal justice. So in terms of this one, let's go and look at how you would do the thesis. So you would have the author's surname and initial, full stop, then there will be a space. Then you will have the date, full stop, and space. And then you will have the title in italics. Now, remember we said the dissertation or thesis is not published as a commercial or formal publication, but the title should still be in italics according to our guidelines. Then there's a full stop and then a space. It's an unpublished master's dissertation, comma, space, University of South Africa, comma, space, and Pretoria. So the publisher is the University of South Africa, and the place of publication is Pretoria. So the name of the institution is written out in full. It's not written as UNISA or UCT. and then the city in which the institution is stated. And there's some more guidelines in terms of the naming convention of the degree. Study guides. Many of you use study guides, and that's good. It's important. Stay grounded in what we are teaching you. So let's consider how you would reference a study guide. So this is the title, this is the cover page. So it's Investigative Principles for Policing 1. And it is the only study guide for OVM 1501. If you page over, there is the author. This one now has contributors and compilers, but what we are looking for is the author. And then the date of publication, which is 2012. Publisher is the University of South Africa, and it is printed in Pretoria. You do not say that it is printed in South Africa, because South Africa is not a place, it is a country. You do not also say it's printed in Gauteng. Gauteng is a province. It has to be the town of publication. So let's take a look at how do we do a study guide. You have the author, a comma, space, the initials, F, full stop, E, full stop, space, date, full stop, space, and then you have the name of the study guide. In terms of this one, it's guidance, counseling, and life skills development, colon, full space, only study guide for that code, and then there's additional information there. So ours would then read investigative principles for policing, colon, space, only study guide for OVM 1501, and we would not have that second part, the educational themes, in the text. Then you would have a full stop. I see these two are changed around. It should be, no, it's right. Pretoria is the place of publication, colon, space, and University of South Africa is the author. When the author of a study guide is unknown, it's important. The University of South Africa then becomes the author. We're going to talk a little bit later about an institutional author. Okay, journal articles. At this stage, one of your primary sources of literature must be journal articles, preferably accredited journal articles. Those are journals that are found on the list issued annually by the Department of Higher Education and Training. So here we have an example of what a journal's cover page looks like. So you would see that's the name of the South African Museums Association, and there is a volume and a date. So on the title page verso, you have your date and you have your who is the publisher. The publisher is the South African Museums Association, and it is published in Cape Town. Then here is the different research articles with the different authors. So if I am using something written by Bongani Mkonza, then I will make use of that chapter. Similarly, if I make use of something from chapter 1, then I will reference viral, comma, space, big B, full stop, space, and then 2021. And let us look quickly how a journal article is published. Again, exactly the same, author's name, initials, year of publication, and then the title of the article. Now, this is where things are a little bit different, because remember, it is the journal that is published, not the individual article. So the title of the article is not italicized, underlined, or put in inverted commas at all. So it's just the normal title of the article, and then you have a full stop, and then you have the title of the journal, which is italicized because it is published. So there's the title of the journal. Then there's a comma and space. You have volumes and you have editions. So this would be volume 8, edition 3. Sometimes it's just a volume, and then you would have 8. Then you would have a colon, no space, and then all the pages of that specific article. So if we go back to this one, and we are using Bongani's article, we would have Mkonzo, comma, space B, full stop, space 2021, full stop, space. Then the title would be Towards Epistemic Repatriation, full stop, space, remembering as the moral responsibility of museums, full stop, space. Then we have South African Museums Association Bulletin, comma, space, then we would have 43, not volume, just 43. Then we would have colon, and then we would have 10 to 17, because his article would go to page 17. And there you see, volume, and as an edition, colon, page this to this, and then full stop. Okay. Now, there are other types of sources, let's say from the internet, from the World Wide Web, and it's important that you use the correct formatting. Some of these sources have authors, some of them don't have authors. It is also important that you put the URL in of where you got the source, as well as the date that you accessed it on. If there is no author, then it will be anon. Otherwise, you would use the name of the author. So in terms of only author's name plus year and page number, if it's available from the website, you do not use the URL in the text. Now, note that both available at, look at the big A, or accessed on are permissible, but you have to use it consistently. If you are choosing available at, you must have available at all the time with a big A. And if you're using accessed on, note the differences. Available at is with a big A, capital A, but the first letter of accessed on is in lowercase. Rule of thumb, be consistent. Okay, look also how the date is done. Accessed on, colon, space, 15 January 2010, close bracket, full stop. And then accessed on, I don't have an available at example, but the date is then in the same format. Another source is conference papers. This is when people present conference papers at conferences, and then it's either just as a conference paper or a conference proceeding. There are two different formats here. This is just a conference paper. So you will see the title of the paper as well as the name of the conference is in italics. What's important is that the name of the conference is there, as well as the place, the place in the country, and then the date of the conference. You do not have to repeat 2011 there, since it's already by the surname. But if there is a conference proceeding, in other words, they bring out a specific journal with conference papers, then it would look like this. You would have the surname of the author or authors, you would have the date, then you have the title of the paper. Now, in the conference proceeding, which is not published, your paper is in italics, but in the conference proceedings, which is published, your paper is not in italics. It will have the page numbers, and then it will have the editor's names. The name of the journal is published, and then a place of publication, and then the publishers as well. In this example, Boca Raton is situated in the state of Florida, and because Boca Raton is not very well known, they put the FL there. And because this was a partnership, both the IPES and Taylor Francis are included as the publishers. Now, sometimes there is no author because the author is an institution, in inverted commas. And then students would argue and say, let's say, the Department of Correctional Services has argued that, or the South African Police Service has argued that. Now, an institution cannot argue. So when you talk about a piece of information coming out of an institutional source like the South African Institute of Race Relations or the Department of Correctional Services, you would always include the reference at the end of the sentence in a bracket, because an institutional author cannot argue. So what you would do is you would first time mention, you would have South African Institute of Race Relations, and in the same bracket you would have the abbreviation, comma, space, date, colon, page, and then a close bracket. I see that there's a full stop missing there. But when you refer to it again, then you can do SAIR. But what I would recommend then to my students is you would have South African Institute of Race Relations, 1998, CSAIR, 1998, so that you can cross-reference in your reference list. Okay, other tips. Multiple authors in the text are cited in one set of brackets when they are listed together, and they are separated by a semicolon, not a colon. And you will notice that this one is listed alphabetically. So Jones comes before King and Brown. We spoke just now about the use of ampersand. So yeah, you can see in the text, King and Brown is separated. In the brackets, King and Brown is separated by an ampersand. Mohapi and Adams, same source, separated by an ampersand. Yet when the same source is outside the brackets, then they are separated by the word and. Do not ask me why. I don't know. This is the rule of the Harvard method, so use it that way, please. We spoke briefly just now about authors with multiple publications in 1 year to have, let's say, 2014A and 2014B. And here you would separate them in terms of the titles are alphabeticized, which will make the first one in the alphabet A and the second one B. The use of et al. Now, where you have 3 or more authors or editors for the same publication, it's important that the first time you mention them, all of the authors are mentioned. So, for example, if you look at the example at the bottom here, Gous, Creer, and Burger with a date in the brackets discuss these 3 factors. That's when it forms part of the sentence. If it's at the end of the sentence, it's Gous, Creer, ampersand, Burger with a date and the page. But after this, it should read Gous et al. And inside the bracket, Gous et al, comma, space, 2000. So you have to make note of that differentiation. I noticed that I have skipped over the legislation, but I'm going to take a pause here quickly and just remind everybody that it's important to know the rules. And there is only one set of rules, and that is the School of Criminal Justice guidelines. You cannot use any other version. It doesn't matter what other disciplines are using. In our discipline, this is what we use, and this is what your referencing will be measured against. In a set of guidelines, if there's a variation, for example, a comma and a space, or a no comma but a space, or a colon and a space, or a colon and no space. Choose one, but use it consistently then. And then follow the rules. It's as simple as that. Before we go to questions, I want to share an example quickly. I'm just going to unshare my screen. I want to quickly share an example of when you are busy drafting your reference list, because formatting is a nightmare sometimes. And remember that the reference list is your responsibility. So what I did is I just have a, oh dear, that's the wrong document. I just have a normal reference list here. Let me just open it quickly. All right, so yeah, we have, let me just share again. Here is the reference list, and yeah, you will see it's just a random reference list. So let me just see quickly. Okay, so it's not alphabetically. I can even make it more confusing and turn these even more around. Okay, so it's okay if you start doing your reference list like this, but let me give you a few tips. The moment you use a source, you come and populate. You have one big reference list. You populate. Let's say you mention it, reference list. Oh dear. And we will save it as draft, and then you save it as, let's say we save it as draft 1, and there it is now saved. It's saved as draft 1. Okay, and now I start entering my references. You will see here's the, okay, but let's talk about formatting quickly. You see this little image here. Now look what happens to the text when I click on it. Can you see that? So I use this religiously because what does it help me look at? Can you see this little space here and here and here? So if I take this away, that little space disappears. If I put it back, that space comes back. So here I can see if I have 2 spaces or if I have no spaces. And then immediately I'm going to say, okay, here's a problem, so there must be a space. And this is where a lot of the students don't pay attention. This is very, very important that you apply the principles religiously. So use this little key so that it can help you see where are your spaces. Okay, so now you've done your reference list. And what I see what some students are doing, they use the tab key to or they go like this, they press enter, and then they do the tab, then they say enter, and then they do the tab. And then yes, it looks okay. Yeah, it looks okay, but there's an easier way. So let's just undo that. There's an easier way. So what you can do is you highlight the text, all of it. So there's my whole reference list. Then you see at the top here, there's little like a ruler here. But you must activate this. So you go to view and then you say ruler. There the ruler's gone. There you say ruler. So now my ruler is there. And now I want the second line. So in other words, the second line I want indented because that's the rule. Then I go to the bottom little triangle and I indent just the bottom line. And there it's the whole document is indented. Okay. But now I've just, yes, and I've just entered and entered and entered and entered, and it's not alphabetical. Ugh, okay, so now I highlight the text again. And now I go to, now I must find that again. I go to, yeah. just next to that other little thing that looks like a little head, and I say A to Z. Then I want the paragraph done from ascending to descending. So in other words, from A to Z, and I say, okay. And what does it do? It arranges it for me alphabetically in terms of the author. And yes, that is what I wanted to show you here. And now I don't think there are going to be questions because we are alone in the group. So yes, thank you for those who have managed to join. Professor Horn, I see you are still with us. Was there something that you wanted to highlight or clarify or emphasize perhaps?
No, thank you, Professor Benson, and thank you especially for the last part on the useful tips. I
Okay.
myself actually learned how to arrange a document alphabetically. Thank you. This was most useful. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we will have a follow-up session in which we look at some tips on in-text referencing and cross-referencing, but that all depends on the needs of the student. So I'm going to end the recording. I'm going to bid you all a wonderful afternoon, and then I hope that you use these tips and guidelines to your advantage and have an awesome day. Thank you. Bye-bye.